And away we go, episode 1138 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Thursday, August 21st, 2025, and we have a new name for the Commanders' team facility in Ashburn, Virginia, BigBear.ai Performance Center at Commanders Park. Rolls right off the tongue, right? BigBear.ai Performance Center at Commanders Park. The facility had been Ortho Virginia Training Center at Commanders Park. The facility now is BigBear.ai Performance Center at Commanders Park. I read to you from a press release from the Commanders on Wednesday morning, quote, BigBear.ai, a leading provider of mission-ready AI solutions for national security and critical infrastructure, today announced a multi-year partnership with the Washington Commanders under which BigBear.ai becomes the naming rights partner for the Commanders training facility in Ashburn, Virginia, end quote. Also from the press release, quote, the Washington Commanders 162-acre training complex, now the BigBear.ai Performance Center, houses 3 grass fields, an indoor turf field, draft room, team meeting rooms, full-strength training and recovery facilities, and an in-house content studio. This facility, combined with BigBear.ai's prominent stadium presence, underscores the broad scope of the partnership, end quote. 2 thoughts. A, Big Bear. That is a strong name for an NFL team's headquarters, as in, we're headed back to Big Bear. That sounds good. B, given the wide-open frontier that is artificial intelligence, AI, in all aspects of life, including the NFL, and given how the Commanders under managing partner Josh Harris are in on analytics and data and sports science like never before, I absolutely could see the team having a big money partnership with a big-time AI company like BigBear.ai as a competitive advantage for the team. The possibilities for AI in the NFL are endless. The Commanders potentially being at the forefront of AI in the NFL is a big deal. We already know about the virtual reality technology, the VR technology, of which Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels has made terrific use. That's just the beginning of what AI in the NFL could be. Hello and welcome to this Thursday installment of the Al Galdi podcast, which follows Washington, D.C. area sports so that you don't have to. I am a real person. I'm not AI. At least I think I am a real person. Commanders head coach Dan Quinn, he is a real person. He has a very friendly relationship with the media. During his press conferences, as you may have noticed, routinely gives answers during which he refers to reporters by their first names. But Coach Quinn, DQ, during a pre-practice press conference on Wednesday afternoon, expressed frustration with a question that was asked by our good friend, Commanders insider Ben Standing. Now, Quinn did not go nuts on Ben. I don't want to oversell this, but I do believe that Quinn and the Commanders front office are becoming sick and tired of the situation with receiver Terry McLaurin. Enough is enough. He did not practice on Wednesday afternoon, even though the team on Saturday morning activated him from the active/physically unable to perform list. Next segment, reaction to the latest in the Terry McLaurin saga and to the latest in the situation of soon-to-be-gone Commanders running back Brian Robinson Jr. Dan Quinn on Wednesday afternoon had a lot to discuss, and then the segment after that, conversation about the Commanders' upcoming cut down to 53, the latest on right guard Samuel Cosmi potentially being ready for week 1 of the regular season, how offensive tackle Josh Conerly Jr. is doing, what Quinn liked and did not like from the team's 31-17 preseason loss to the Cincinnati Bengals at Northwest Stadium on Monday Night Football this past Monday night, and more off comments from Quinn on Wednesday afternoon. And also on the show, I'll talk Nationals. They on Wednesday evening beat the New York Mets 5-4 at Nationals Park. No game for the Orioles on Wednesday, but we on Wednesday did have major Orioles news. The O's on Wednesday afternoon announced that closer Felix Bautista on Tuesday underwent surgery to repair a torn right rotator cuff and a torn right labrum. He's expected to miss 12 months. We knew that he was done for the season due to a right shoulder injury. We did not know that he was done for most, if not all, of next season. Devastating news for the O's, who are being hammered by injury for a second consecutive season. They lately have been playing much better, but it still has been one bad injury news item after another with this team this season. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Email from Dr. CCB on the Terry McLaurin situation, writes the doctor. Good morning, Galdi. It has been a while since I wrote in. Things are settling down from my husband's passing, but I'm writing because football is back. Even though I have not written in a couple of months, I listen to the podcast every day, and all of this Terry McLaurin talk is getting tiring. I am leaning more in line with the team, but I wonder why Terry has not considered JD5's mom since she is a licensed agent. Just thinking out loud. Have an awesome day and talk to you soon, Dr. CCB. Well, thank you very much for the email, Doctor. Great to hear from you. All the best to you and your family. Jaden Daniels' mom, Regina Jackson, she in 2024 did become an NFL Players Association certified agent, but as best as we can tell, she is not a practicing NFLPA agent, although her representing Terry McLaurin in his contract extension negotiations with the team would be something. But I'll read to you from a piece by NFL insider Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports from this past October 10th. Headline, quote, Jaden Daniels' mother added to growing list of NFL parents who have also become agents, end quote. Reads the piece, quote, based on CBS Sports research and conversations around the league, it's likely Jackson is the first parent of a top 3 draft pick in NFL history to become a certified agent. And Jackson adds to a growing list of NFL parents who are joining the agent ranks. Jackson is not listed among Daniels' representation. The young star has 4 agents on file with the NFLPA, all of Agency One Sports, end quote. Also in the piece is this quote from a Denise White, a public relations specialist who works with Jaden Daniels and his family. This is Denise White on Regina Jackson becoming an NFLPA certified agent. Quote, for her, taking the agent's test is because she wants to be knowledgeable and helping her son and guiding him through his NFL career. It's important for her to have all that knowledge so she can give her son guidance, which will help him focus on the field, and she can help focus off the field for him, end quote. Perhaps things will change or have changed, but as far as we know, Regina Jackson, Mama Jaden Daniels, is not a practicing NFLPA agent. Good for her, though, for educating herself to where she is a certified NFLPA agent. Email from Joe in Houston of her conversation with former Redskins guard Ross Tucker, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast on last Thursday's show, episode 1133. Writes Joe, hello, Al. Thanks again for helping me get through my gym workout and for the awesome content. I really enjoyed your interview with Ross Tucker in episode 1133. I always enjoy content where a player gives an account of playing with teammates and especially coaches. I was surprised at first to hear Ross Tucker mention that he holds Marty Schottenheimer's coaching approach / management style above that of Joe Gibbs. To me, Joe Gibbs is the greatest head coach of all time. I also appreciated Marty. I remember how he had LeVar playing at his full potential. How great was Marty? Very. I did some research. In his 21 seasons, his teams reached the playoffs 13 times and had only 2 losing records. He was about to turn the Redskins around before getting fired. Instead, he went to the Chargers and was named Coach of the Year in 2004 for transforming the Chargers from a 4-12 team the year before his short tenure to a 12-4 team. Heck, Marty gifted Norv Turner his Schottenheimer rebuilt Chargers, and that team, under Norv Turner, mind you, went 11-5. Sadly, we lost Marty for good in 2021 after his battle with Alzheimer's disease, but thanks to Ross Tucker and your pod, Marty lives on, and we got to hear how he changed players and teams by making them better. I now have a much deeper appreciation for Marty. Please bring Ross back soon. Al, one last thought. Perhaps you could explain why Marty only won 5 of his 18 postseason games. Was it his special teams units? Thank you, and keep up the excellent work. Thank you for the email, Joe. Ross Tucker was excellent in his appearance on this podcast. Marty Schottenheimer, he was the Redskins head coach and director of football operations from January 2001 to January 2002. That was it. The Skins in the 2001 regular season went from 0-5 to 8-8. Of the many mistakes made by our friend Dan Snyder during his time as Washington owner, you could argue that his biggest football mistake was firing Marty after just his one season with the Skins, especially considering that Marty was succeeded by Steve Spurrier, and his tenure as Skins head coach was a debacle, 12-20 over 2 regular seasons. Marty's playoff record as an NFL head coach is just 5-13. That was due to a few things. There was a snake-bitten nature to Marty in the playoffs. Like, he was just victimized by some bad breaks, including the drive and the fumble. Not a drive, drive and a fumble, but the drive and the fumble. Google those things if you're unfamiliar with them. Also, Marty in the playoffs could get overly conservative. That was another reason for the postseason struggles. But Marty, to me, was a terrific head coach. His regular season record as an NFL head coach is 200, 126, and 1, a winning percentage of .613. He took 3 different franchises to the NFL playoffs: the Cleveland Browns, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the San Diego Chargers. He made the playoffs in 13 of his 21 seasons as an NFL head coach. That's a pretty good career. Hey, if you are a Commanders fan and you are looking for upgraded conversation about the team, check out bgobsession.com. All kinds of cool things at bgobsession.com as we get set for the Commanders' 2025 regular season, including the 5th annual BGO Crystal Ball Pool and the 2025 BGO NFL Pick'em Contest. BG Obsession, or BGO, it has been the home of the most knowledgeable, friendly, and passionate Washington fans on the web since 2009. BGO is a special place at which you can join your fellow fans for smart football discussion, great contests, game day chats, and even lifelong friendships. Do yourself a favor, visit and join BGO at bgobsession.com. bgobsession.com, home to your burgundy and gold obsession. Hey, please consider subscribing to the podcast if you're not already doing that. Subscribing to the podcast costs nothing. Make sure that you never miss an episode. It helps out the podcast a lot. And if you're already subscribing, thank you. The Commanders will conclude their 3-game 2025 preseason with a game against the Baltimore Ravens at Northwest Stadium this Saturday at noon. The Commanders practiced on Wednesday afternoon, though this was more of a jog-through type practice. But 2 players who had been dealing with injury were back practicing: quarterback Marcus Mariota and left guard Brandon Coleman. It was good to see that. Coleman hadn't practiced since leaving practice on August 2nd. Among those not practicing for the Commanders on Wednesday afternoon were receiver Terry McLaurin and running back Brian Robinson Jr. More on Robinson in a bit, but this Terry McLaurin situation may well be reaching a boiling point. McLaurin on July 15th in a 32-plus minute session with reporters sounded off on his frustration with the team and contract extension negotiations, including calling what the team was offering him, quote, disrespectful, end quote. McLaurin then was a training camp holdout. He was on the reserve/did not report list from July 23rd to July 27th. The holdout on July 27th became a hold-in. He was on the active/physically unable to perform list from July 27th until this past Saturday morning, August 16th. This due to an ankle injury that is believed to be a cover for him to not practice. So we on July 31st had the reports that McLaurin had requested to be traded, and those reports were confirmed by Commanders head coach Dan Quinn during his pre-practice press conference on August 2nd, and McLaurin did not attend the team's 31-17 preseason loss to the Cincinnati Bengals at Northwest Stadium on Monday Night Football this past Monday night, although that was an excused absence. He is off the active/physically unable to perform list. This ankle injury, which at best is exaggerated and at worst is completely fraudulent, should be gone now, and yet he still isn't practicing. Dan Quinn did a pre-practice press conference on Wednesday afternoon. This was Quinn on the status of Terry McLaurin, and then you'll hear a follow-up exchange with Commanders insider John Keim of ESPN.
The return to play part that's the good news. So we're out of the rehab phase with Terry. His ankle's good. He's healthy. So now it's a return to play. What goes into all that at that position specifically, like the max speeds, the decelerations, the route tree of going through that. So that's kind of the good news of where we're at. It's just conditioning and football and returning to play. And so almost all the guys are at some phase along that way. You're going to see McGee at practice. You're going to see Baptiste, they just have kind of gone through that process as well, where they're out of the rehab portion of their, returning to play. And then it's back into like the football simulated work. So, we're excited that, he's back and getting better conditioning and getting things going. Chick? Yeah, we're on the return to play format. So it starts off as rehab. I can go through it again if you want.
So Dan Quinn explaining that Terry McLaurin now is in a return to play stage, a conditioning phase. And that actually is plausible because ankle injury or no ankle injury, he hasn't been practicing and presumably has not been working out as hard as he otherwise would, given this debilitating ankle injury. So he probably does need some return-to-play conditioning, ramp-up type work before fully practicing. But did you notice what else Dan Quinn said in that cut that I just played for you? He said of McLaurin, quote, "His ankle's good. He's healthy." End quote.
His ankle's good. He's healthy.
Yeah, there you go. Dan Quinn on Terry McLaurin, quote, "His ankle's good. He's healthy." End quote. That stood out to me. Quinn, whether he meant to or not, put an onus on McLaurin, making it clear that he's healthy. And we later in the press conference got our first sign of frustration from Dan Quinn with this Terry McLaurin situation. We on Wednesday afternoon had this exchange between Commanders insider Ben Standig and Quinn.
Dan, just to clarify, will we see Terry today out here doing anything?
Not at the practice portion. He had a big part of the run that went along today. I'm not going to play Where's Waldo, guys, all right, moving forward. So just so we're clear on that. So Terry's return to play format is no different than any of the other players. And so I'm not jumping at you, Ben, but I wanted to make sure, like, the next question doesn't go down this line. He's healthy, which is now a good step to, like, getting closer to being back on the field. So you'll see that earlier than later. I don't have a date circled on my whiteboard in my office, this day for him, this day for him. But, yeah, the good news, we're getting closer to that for sure.
All right, Dan Quinn on what Terry McLaurin is up to, quote, "I'm not going to play Where's Waldo?" End quote. Why not? Where's Waldo was a fun game back in the day. Now, Quinn was quick to say that he was not mad at our guy Ben Standig for the question. Quinn's a nice guy. He's a good guy. But that is as annoyed as we have seen him at a press conference since he became the Commanders head coach in February 2024. By Dan Quinn standards, that was him being annoyed. And I don't blame him. It's time for Terry McLaurin to start practicing. It's time for this holdout that became a hold-in and now actually may be back to being a holdout stops. The Commanders overwhelmingly have the leverage in this situation. That leverage increased via them activating him from that active/physically unable to perform list this past Saturday morning. And he's under contract for the 2025 season. He isn't someone without a contract. He's someone with a contract, a substantial contract. McLaurin, per overthecap.com, has the second highest salary cap number on the team for the 2025 season, $25.5 million. The way that this situation gets talked about by some people, you think that the Commanders are paying a minimum wage. No, he actually is getting paid quite well. He deserves to be paid quite well. And he will continue to be paid quite well beyond this season in some way. Just not in the way that he wants. You know, we bit by bit have gotten a sense of what the heck is going on in these contract extension negotiations. The first breakthrough came via what ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter said on the Pat McAfee show on July 28th. Schefter said that he believed that McLaurin, quote, wants considerably more, end quote, than a $33 million average annual value, a $33 million AAV. Then ESPN Stephen A. Smith on ESPN's First Take on August 1st said that his sources had told him that the Commanders were offering Terry McLaurin, quote, about $27 million, end quote, per season. Then ESPN NFL insider Jeremy Fowler on ESPN's Get Up on August 7th said that there was a $7 million or $8 million gap between what the Commanders were offering McLaurin in terms of AAV and what McLaurin wanted in terms of AAV. Then Yahoo Sports NFL insider Charles Robinson on Yahoo Sports' Inside Coverage YouTube show in an episode that came out on August 13th said of McLaurin's initial ask in these contract extension negotiations, quote, what the initial number was high enough that it almost completely broke down conversation instantaneously. I think the Commanders were stunned at initially what the ask was, end quote. And now we have this. Commanders insider Nikki Javala of The Athletic. She, in a piece that came out on Wednesday morning, wrote, quote, one person with knowledge of McLaurin's contract negotiations said the veteran receiver has asked for more than DK Metcalf, who signed a 4-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers earlier this year. If McLaurin is seeking more than Metcalf's $33 million a year in average annual value, that would put him in the top 4 among receivers. If he seeks more than the $60 million Metcalf is guaranteed, that would land him in the top 10 receivers among guaranteed money. If McLaurin is using Metcalf's deal as a benchmark based on percentage of the team's cap, the Commanders' wideout would be asking for more than 11.8% of Washington's cap in average annual value, which would be at least the 5th highest percentage among receivers, according to Spotrac, end quote. So yet another report regarding the ask of Terry McLaurin in these contract extension negotiations, an ask that, per these reports, is quite substantial. You know, when Jeremy Fowler on August 7th said that there was a $7 million or $8 million gap between what the Commanders were offering McLaurin in terms of AAV and what McLaurin wanted in terms of AAV, it was hard to know whether that gap was more because the Commanders were too low or McLaurin was too high. Well, if you go off the reporting of Adam Schefter, Charles Robinson, and now Nikki Javala, the gap appears more because McLaurin is too high. 3 reputable people right there, Schefter, Robinson, Javala, all saying the same thing in some form. And if McLaurin's ask is that high, the ask needs to come down. Sorry, but that's the reality if he truly wants to get a contract extension / new contract. This tactic of shooting for the moon with the ask isn't working and isn't going to work. I had a post on X this past Saturday morning and on this past Monday's show, episode 1135, said that the longer that this Terry McLaurin situation goes on, the more that it becomes apparent that Commanders general manager Adam Peters is playing this very well, and McLaurin's agent, Buddy Baker, is playing this very poorly. Peters has the leverage, he knows it, and he's exercising it. And Baker, it feels like, is just throwing stuff against the wall, seeing what'll stick. Baker's most notable NFL client by far is Terry McLaurin, and what I have come to think is that Baker is trying to hit a home run in these contract extension negotiations for the purpose of building his practice. And look, if what Baker is doing works, all props to him. I just don't see how this is going to work for him. What has always been likely, and now is even more likely, is the Commanders either signing McLaurin to a contract extension / new contract to their liking, or the team not signing him to a contract extension / new contract at all and playing this year to year. And they can do that, right? They have McLaurin under contract for the 2025 season, his age 30 season, and have the franchise tag tool for the 2026 season and even the 2027 season. The team can play this year to year for another 3 seasons and avoid getting locked into some burdensome contract. I want Terry McLaurin to have a ton of success. I want him to make a ton of money. None of this is personal. But McLaurin doesn't have the leverage. He doesn't have the cards. He's never had the leverage. He's never had the cards. And he's not going to get the leverage. He's not going to gain possession of the cards. And him not practicing right now doesn't change any of that. All it does is annoy the Commanders and perhaps compel them to start finding him and withholding the money that he is owed under his current contract. Enough is enough with this situation. By the way, regarding Terry McLaurin not attending the preseason loss to the Bengals this past Monday night, we on Wednesday afternoon had this exchange between Adam Kilgore of the Washington Post and Dan Quinn.
Understanding what you just said about now wanting to play like Where's Waldo, yep. I think there is some interest and curiosity for guys like Terry and even Cosmi. Like, what is the sort of organizational philosophy of why it's okay or even preferable for them not to go to the game on Monday night?
Yeah, it's really custom to how we want to do things by player. Some big rehab here, some not on those particular days. So that's how we decide to, go through all the guys. If I would show you a list of who's rehab, who's doing what on what day and how they go, they have that mapped out pretty good.
Well, also not at the preseason loss to the Bengals this past Monday night was Brian Robinson. His time with the Commanders essentially is done. We on Sunday evening had reports that the Commanders are interested in trading Robinson. He then did not play at all in that preseason loss to the Bengals on Monday night. And Dan Quinn, during his postgame press conference late night on Monday night, essentially confirmed that the team is going to trade Robinson or cut Robinson. Dan Quinn on Wednesday afternoon with an update, sort of, on this Brian Robinson situation.
Yes, no updates. Brian's been excused from the practice for today, and we hope to have some resolution on that soon.
So Brian Robinson, no surprise, was excused from Wednesday afternoon's practice. And Dan Quinn on the Brian Robinson situation, quote, "We hope to have some resolution on that soon," end quote. Translation, we hope to trade this guy soon. Now, the good news is that there does appear to be a trade market for Brian Robinson. I was thinking that this was going to be a John Allen situation, but maybe not. The Commanders this past March 7th announced having released interior defensive lineman Jonathan Allen. The reporting was that Allen had asked the Commanders for a contract extension, but that they didn't want to give him one, and thus granted him permission to seek a trade. But teams anticipated the Commanders releasing Allen, so there wasn't much of a trade market for him, even though he got a nice deal from the Minnesota Vikings. He signed with the Vikings as an unrestricted free agent in a deal that was announced on March 11th, and they gave him good money, a reported 3-year, $51 million contract with $23.255 million fully guaranteed at signing. But take a listen to this on Brian Robinson. This was NFL insider Mike Garafolo of NFL Network on NFL Network's The Insiders on Tuesday.
Elsewhere in that game, on the other side, Brian Robinson Jr. did not play, and Dan Quinn pretty much confirming that they're going to move on from Robinson here. He is set to make a total of $3.5 million per this season, in the final year of his deal. So looking like a potential trade. Both sides agreed not going to play in that game to keep a trade alive. Didn't want him to get hurt in that case. There's interest, and not just like, oh, his agent or his marketing guy told me there's interest. I know there's interest because as I've reported this, I've heard from teams who are saying, what happened there? How did he fall out of favor? Does he want a new contract? Yeah, I mean, eventually he does, but this is a contract year, and right now, given this situation, my understanding is he wants the best possible situation for him to have the best possible season, Ian, to set him up for a payday this offseason as a free agent. So right now, all about fit for Brian Robinson. I believe he's going to have a new home. If it's not via trade and they got to cut him, he'll have a new home in short order.
All right, so Mike Garafolo saying that there is legitimate trade interest in Brian Robinson. Now, I don't expect the Commanders to get anything more than a day 3 pick in an NFL draft for him, but, something is better than nothing. We on the podcast have done a lot on why the Commanders are moving on from Robinson. Those reasons include the team liking who else it has at running back, including Chris Rodriguez Jr. He in the preseason loss to the Bengals on Monday night had 6 carries for 62 yards, so was not targeted in the passing game. He played on 21% of the Commanders' offensive snaps. So the Commanders' second offensive snap of the game was a monster run by Rodriguez. On a 1st and 10 for the Commanders at their 45, Rodriguez had a 40-yard pistol handoff run. A problem for Brian Robinson has been a lack of explosive runs. Boy, did it stand out that Rodriguez and running back Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt each had an explosive run in the first quarter on Monday night. Krosky-Merritt had that 1st and 10, 27-yard shotgun handoff touchdown run with 5:36 left in the first quarter. He, for the game, had 11 carries for 46 yards and a touchdown and had 2 receptions for no yards on 2 targets and playing on 37% of the Commanders' offensive snaps. So the Commanders took Chris Rodriguez out of the University of Kentucky in the 6th round of the 2023 NFL Draft. He, over his first 2 NFL regular seasons, has totaled 86 carries for 420 yards and 4 touchdowns, an average of 4.88 yards per carry. Now, the Commanders last August 27th in their cutdown to 53 released Rodriguez. They the next day announced having signed him to their practice squad, but they were not happy with his conditioning. That, however, has changed. We on Wednesday afternoon had this exchange between Ben Standig and Dan Quinn.
With Chris Rodriguez, what have you noticed the difference with him, maybe on the field and maybe getting ready to play football from when you first got him to now?
Conditioning, for sure. This is a guy who's changed his body and now has allowed, the passing game. He's more fluid to go into that. He's always been a strong runner. That was Chris coming out from at college at Kentucky to here, and you saw that in the way he got his opportunity some in some 4 minutes to finish some games. But he's very consistent in his tracks, in his run game. So I've seen that. What I have seen, this elevated conditioning that allows him, now there's more ops on punt, there's more ops on other spaces. So he's really, by doing that, given himself more ops. And so he's off to a good start.
And perhaps Chris Rodriguez will be a major factor for the Commanders early in the 2025 regular season. He did not play on a single offensive snap last regular season until the Commanders' 27-22 win at the New York Giants last November 3rd. The Commanders, beyond Brian Robinson, have the following running backs: Austin Eckler, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, a.k.a. Bill, Chris Rodriguez, Jeremy McNichols, Kazmir Allen, and Demetric Felton. We're on Wednesday afternoon at this exchange with Dan Quinn.
Coach, you talked about kind of both the Brian Robinson situation as well as Chris Rodriguez, but how are you and other coaches kind of approaching conversations with other running backs on the team with the lack of a resolution with Brian Robinson now, and kind of gearing up those running backs for whatever might happen next?
I didn't have any extra conversations with any of the other runners. I had a discussion with the whole team, but not specifically with Austin or Chris or Bill or Kaz or Felt or any of the guys. So I just would rather tell everybody I don't want to have one code for these guys and something for somebody else. So they're big guys. They know what's at stake, and that's what I like seeing in the game. Prove it in competition, and I knew this is a very competitive group. Fortunately, at the spot, it looked no further than like Austin Eckler and Jeremy McNichol of like what a pro would look like. They're the absolute standard, and for those in the room that's covered those two, they know exactly on the field, off the field, their drill work, their special teams play. They're just an epitome of, kind of the commander way, that way we want to get down at running back and just at football.
All right. Catering by Uptown provides catering to perfection. Whatever event you're planning, especially a wedding, visit cateringbyuptown.com. Mention that Al Galdi sent you and see what Catering by Uptown can do for you. Catering by Uptown provides both great service and a great price. Catering by Uptown is a family business. It's run by the Pereiras, who are great Commanders fans and loyal supporters of this podcast. Catering by Uptown specializes in handling everything so that you don't have to. Catering by Uptown understands that special events deserve to be celebrated in style and thus takes care of every detail so that you can enjoy your event. Great service, amazing cuisine, and reliability are the foundation of what makes Catering by Uptown one of the most referred caterers throughout Maryland, Washington, D.C., and Northern Virginia. And know this, if you visit cateringbyuptown.com and click on venues, you can set up your own personal tour of one of Catering by Uptown's premier venues, including outstanding waterfront venues. Catering by Uptown offers the ability to coordinate services at over 100 of the best reception halls, vineyards, farms, historic homes, event venues, banquet facilities, and wedding venues in the area. Visit cateringbyuptown.com and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. That's cateringbyuptown.com and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. More now on the Commanders, off them practicing on Wednesday afternoon in preparation for their 2025 preseason finale, home to the Baltimore Ravens this Saturday at noon. The game will happen just 3 days before the cutdown to 53. Saturday, August 23rd is the Commanders' 2025 preseason finale. Tuesday, August 26th is the Commanders' cutdown to 53, the setting of the initial 53-man roster for the 2025 season. It is on Tuesday, August 26th, that each NFL team must have its active roster at a maximum of 53 players by 4 p.m. Eastern. The Commanders on Wednesday afternoon did announce a cut. They announced having release guard Julian Good-Jones, although this, per Commanders insider John Keim of ESPN, is a waived/injured situation. So if Good-Jones is not claimed, he'll be placed on injured reserve. Here was Commanders head coach Dan Quinn during his pre-practice press conference on Wednesday afternoon on whether starters/key players will play against the Ravens this Saturday afternoon. And then you'll hear a follow-up exchange with WUSA 9 sports anchor Chick Hernandez.
I saw some things, honestly, going through. There's still a lot of moving parts, Chick, not at the entire offensive line. So it'll be more customized in this game. Not as many players from the game against Cincinnati, but there's definitely a lot of battles that I'm looking forward to seeing at a number of spots. But it won't be as many that we played in Cincinnati for sure.
How difficult is these next couple days as you try to figure out that 53 for this coaching staff?
Yeah, it's all part of the whole process, and this time of year can be most challenging for the players that may see themselves on the roster bubble or the practice squad bubble, and you just try to encourage them, man, like, try not to count, like best foot forward, what's your best look like, and I've seen a lot of that from guys at practice. I've been also impressed by some players, that we've added late and then have worked their ass off to get caught up. I've seen that, with Hamilton. He played on defense. He played on teams. I was impressed by that. And then we added, another new offensive tackle in Fant today. So I'll be excited to get on the field with him. But this time of year, man, it does get heated in that space. But that's my messaging, to make sure, man, like, don't get into the counting business. Like, whatever your best looks like, we talked about it early, just that competition of going for it with one another and supporting each other. And I liked what I've seen from that side. But it's a real thing. It's a real emotion. They want it badly to make it, and they know this is a team they want to be a part of. So I want to make sure they stay in that pocket of doing right.
Well, regarding Commanders quarterbacks for the preseason game against the Ravens on Saturday afternoon, obviously no QB1, Jaden Daniels, obviously no QB2, Marcus Mariota. I had thought that the Commanders should consider playing Sam Hartman for the entire game because Josh Johnson clearly has won the QB3 competition, and you don't want to risk injury with him. But, Hartman has been so bad that him playing, to me, is hurting the evaluations of other players. He was really bad in the preseason opening 48-18 loss at the New England Patriots on August 8th. He was really bad in the 31-17 preseason loss to the Cincinnati Bengals at Northwest Stadium on Monday Night Football this past Monday night. Do you know that tight end Ben Sinnott and receiver Luke McCaffrey in that game combined for one target? Sinnott played on 44% of the Commanders' offensive snaps, but had no receptions on one target. McCaffrey played on 54% of the Commanders' offensive snaps, but he was not targeted a single time. These guys need work as pass catchers. Them combining for one target in a preseason game is inexcusable. And I put a lot of that on Sam Hartman. He played on 54% of the Commanders' offensive snaps. As for the cut down to 53, we on Wednesday afternoon had this exchange between 7 News DC sports director Scott Abraham and Dan Quinn.
Hey, Dan. Next week, you got to get down to 53, that initial 53. So as you're going through the evaluation, what are some of the position groups, maybe one or two, that's been really challenging to evaluate as you get down to next week?
Yeah, there's been we knew going in, tight ends had, a deep crew. Running backs would have a deep crew. Certainly the safeties have been that way. So all of them have their own competitions. And it, like this morning, I was had made some individual cut-ups on individual players. Sometimes as a coach, I'm watching all 22 on this play and all 22, and then we'll just look back in at one player. I want to see the last 2 games, every rep. And we'll do that a lot, too. If you were comparing you and I, here's all your plays, watch them. Here's all my plays, watch them. And that's a good way to do it as well. And then, quite honestly, there's also around the league. Like one thing that I admire from Adam is give Fant as an example. With he and with Lance, they're not backing off competing. And if there are ways and times that we can improve the team, they've proven that they're down for that. And it's one of the things I really respect about Adam, knowing it's not just here that everybody's competing against. It's around the National Football League and scouting and looking at guys. So when you're in the building, you don't think of that way. You're just looking at this practice and these people. But that's why I was referring to Chick earlier, not counting. Because it's not just this room that you're counting. It's a standard, it's a way, and how you play. And so I think that's really important. And the best of the best from a player standpoint know that. And so you got to produce all the time.
And Dan Quinn right there brought up a wild card in the construction of the Commanders' 53-man roster, players cut by other NFL teams. A big part of the job of general manager Adam Peters and assistant general manager Lance Newmark right now is studying other teams' rosters, and once cuts are made, seeing who might be worth getting. The Commanders' offensive line was a major topic during Dan Quinn's pre-practice press conference on Wednesday afternoon, and we got an update on right guard Samuel Cosmi, who the Commanders on July 23rd announced as having placed on the active/physically unable to perform list. This due to a torn right ACL that he suffered in the 45-31 win at the Detroit Lions this past January 18th in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Dan Quinn, during a pre-practice press conference on July 23rd, said that Sam Cosmi being ready for Week 1 of the regular season was, quote, on the table for sure, end quote. Now, Quinn since then has been careful about not declaring anything regarding Cosmi's availability for Week 1. We on Wednesday afternoon had this exchange between Commanders insider Nikki Jhabvala of The Athletic and Quinn.
As far as Sam Cosmi, now with it being close to 2 weeks before the opener, what's your feeling for his status going in?
Yeah, where I originally earlier had said I don't have a date on some people. That's different because of PUP and not. So that is a date that you do have to say, okay, by this time, are you able to get into that? Good news for Sam, I'm glad you brought him up. He has hit all the markers along the way to set himself up to begin, that process where then it begins the individual work into that. So as we get closer, we'll have a better shot for him to, start into the practice phase of things. So I'm encouraged, Nikki, by the work that he's put in. So I'm hopeful that's where it goes. That otherwise it's like a longer 4-week process to wait. So all signs today would indicate that he's hitting those marks.
Okay, so cautious optimism, it would appear, for Sam Cosmi regarding him being ready for Week 1 of the regular season. The man who the Commanders on April 24th took out of the University of Oregon with the number 29 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, offensive tackle Josh Conerly Jr. He was the Commanders' starting right tackle in the preseason loss to the Bengals this past Monday night. He played on 40% of the Commanders' offensive snaps. So the man who Conerly has been competing with for the starting right tackle job, Andrew Wiley, he was the team starting left tackle this past Monday night, as not playing in the game were 3 key Commanders offensive linemen and Laramie Tunsil, Brandon Coleman, and Sam Cosmi. How is Conerly doing? We on Wednesday afternoon had this exchange between Adam Kilgore of the Washington Post and Dan Quinn.
As you've watched Conerly throughout camp, what has stood out to you the most as far as the way he's made that transition from left to right, and maybe why is that more difficult than the average Joe might understand?
Right. I'll tell you, Adam, one of the things that jumped out to be more than even left to right was in the run game. And I thought he was make that transition just athletically. He'll put it in, and guys have moved that one. I'm not going to say I was surprised by it, but the run game part of him was even better than I had thought. Sometimes you think of an athletic tackle and your mind goes to pass protection. But he's a very strong run defender. He can clamp on you. He can move you. You saw that with some double teams the other day. We've seen him pull. So that would be probably as big a shift for me as it was even from left to right is in the run game. I thought he'd acclimate to that just based on the athleticism. But the running game part, I've certainly been impressed by that so far.
All right. What about the fact that the Commanders during training camp in the preseason have been without a good number of key offensive linemen due to injury? We on Wednesday afternoon had this back and forth between Barry Svrluga, columnist for the Washington Post, and Dan Quinn.
Sticking with the offensive line, you've had a lot of moving parts throughout camp. Does that concern you at all? Because you're then going to have Cosmi coming back in there at some point.
Yeah. It's not ideal. And I think you want to control the things you can. So Coleman's back into some practice today, so that's a good sign. There's nothing like the practice work. We can do it on the walkthrough, we can do it in the meeting room, but it does help, when the guys are side by side and going through it together. So it's not ideal, but I also know there's a silver lining in the contingency plans that go along with that, where when somebody's out and the next person comes in, they get to do their thing. And I think it's opened up some spaces for Chris Paul, and I've seen more versatility from him than I ever have. But no, you'd like for those guys to get the reps in together. And as a coach, I want them all, man, just so I can think of how to do it and how to get there, and whether that's Terry or Sam or Brandon, who was out, or Marcus. So I think about them a lot and how much, how quickly we need them back to get ready. But I guess I look at it also from the silver lining to say, when there's been some spaces for some chances to move it around, guys have responded.
I mean, does Wiley kind of fit in really well there because you're reminded, I can do a bunch of different things with this guy?
His attitude has just been so on point from the offseason so far in this training camp. He's played right tackle, he's played left guard, he started at left tackle the other day, and so it really comes from his mindset first. Honestly, there was zero resistance on the day that Coleman had gotten injured in practice. All of a sudden, you just saw Wiley just go in at left guard. It was like, there wasn't even a play that changed. I'll move, and I like what he brings to us in that way.
Well, the Commanders do have a new offensive lineman. The team on Tuesday afternoon announced the signing of unrestricted free agent offensive tackle George Fant. Of the 2025 season would be his age 33 season. He and his NFL career has played in regular season games for the Seattle Seahawks, New York Jets, and Houston Texans. We on Wednesday afternoon had this exchange between Mitch Tischler of Monumental Sports Network and Dan Quinn.
With George Fant, what do you like about him, and why now for a player like that?
The length, obviously, for a tackle, he looks great. He had a workout with us last week, and then Adam and the team, were able to finalize all that over the weekend. So that's a really big deal for us to add somebody with George's experience and length and at offensive tackle. It's very, very cool to have somebody with his experience and background and play style and skill, all of that. So we're really pumped to add him to the crew.
Yeah, Andrew Wiley's versatility is important, and yes, I get that he's not an all-pro. And then, regarding the Commanders' performance in the preseason loss to the Bengals on Monday night, Dan Quinn, during the opening statement of his pre-practice press conference on Wednesday afternoon, gave us some of his takeaways from the game. Here you go.
I figured I'd start just going through the game, and getting a chance to watch it. Figured hit you up on some things that I liked. First, I thought run game-wise and pass protection from the offensive line, I thought I liked where that's headed. I liked what I saw. You've heard me talk about the gap schemes and people on the move and pulling. That was something that, I saw improvement that the guys have been working hard at. I liked the energy of the defense in the first part of the game. I thought that felt a lot more like us, just in terms of the tackling, the physicality. I liked a couple plays early by Quan and J.K. down on the near the goal line, so that was good to see. On the sideline, I thought I saw countless examples of brotherhood, of people coaching one another up, going through things together. And I thought the three captains, really represented themselves. That was Martin and Good Jones and Yankoff. Some areas I wanted to see improve. I'm not happy with the ball being at a -2 for the game. Not likely going to win a lot doing that. And our tackling and breaking tackles. We're not near the space we need to be on that. And then on our kickoff cover and our kickoff return, those are two of the groups I'm most proud of and are the biggest part of our identity. And so I've got super high standards for them. So I'd like to see, more consistent kick-ass plays, on that group. I saw it after the first kickoff. I saw, one of the returns later, but those are two groups that I just, have such high standards for in our team, and I want to consistently see that higher. So
it seemed like Dan Quinn there was alluding to Commanders kicker Matt Gay. He on Monday night went 1 for 1 on field goals and 2 for 2 on extra points. He made a 37-yard field goal with 7:28 left in the third quarter. But some of his kickoffs this past Monday night seemed short. Now, I say seemed because we don't know for sure what he was being told to do, but the opening kickoff of the game, a 53-yard kickoff to the Bengals 12. Later in the first quarter, a 54-yard kickoff to the Bengals 11. Third quarter, a 55-yard kickoff to the Bengals 10. These kickoffs should be landing between the 1 and 5 yard lines, or at least inside the 10-yard line. Hey, if you are a longtime Washington fan or just want to learn more about the team, I want to tell you about an outstanding new book, RFK All Access by Scott Cunningham. Scott served as a photographer for NFL properties for years. He photographed the Redskins extensively during their glory days of the 1980s and early 1990s. Scott, via RFK All Access, has put together a compilation of his best Redskins photos, many of which are behind-the-scenes photos. Joe Gibbs, Jack Kent Cook, Richie Pettibone, the Hogs, the Posse, Sonny Sam and Frank All, and so many more are featured in this book, which is 392 pages of glorious Skins history. 5 pounds of Redskins gold. If you are a serious Washington fan, if you are a Skins historian, the book is a must-have. Also makes for a great gift. This is a book that has been endorsed by Joe Gibbs himself. Quote, "This is a great book filled with great memories," end quote. I have the book. It is sensational. RFK All Access. You can get the book by visiting rfkallaccess.com. And when you order the book, mention in the notes section that Al Galdi sent you. That's rfkallaccess.com and mention in the notes section that Al Galdi sent you. So the Nationals on Thursday will conclude a 7-game homestand against the 2 best teams in the National League East, and the Nats have a chance for this to be a winning homestand. The Nats split a 4-game series with the NL East leading Philadelphia Phillies this past Thursday through Sunday, and the Nats have split the first 2 games of a 3-game series against the New York Mets. Wednesday evening, a 5-4 win over the Mets at Nationals Park, improving the Nats to 51-75 in MLB's 2025 regular season. Worst record in the NL East, second worst record in the National League. This was a game in which Nats interim manager Miguel Cairo got ejected in the top of the 6th, but the Nats won. Good offense by the Nats. They scored 5 runs, totaled 7 hits, worked 3 walks, and went 3 for 10 with runners in scoring position. The 7 hits were a home run, a triple, 2 doubles, and 3 singles. The Nats did well against Mets starting pitcher Kodai Senga, who allowed 5 runs, 4 earned in 5 innings. Now, no Nats player had more than 1 hit in the game, but there were some big hits. Dylan Cruz, he is the Nats starting right fielder and number 7 batter, went 1 for 3 with an RBI double and a walk. Cruz in the Nats 2-run 4th had a 1-out RBI double to left field for a 3-0 Nats lead. Drew Millis, he is the Nats starting catcher and number 8 batter, went 1 for 2 with an RBI triple. Millis in the Nats 2-run 4th had a 1-out RBI triple down the right field line for a 4-0 Nats lead. Josh Bell, he is the Nats starting first baseman and number 3 batter, went 1 for 3 with a solo homer and an RBI sac fly. Bell in the Nats 1-run 5th had a 1-out solo homer to right center field for a 5-1 Nats lead. The homer went a projected 420 feet per StatCast. My biggest complaint with the Nats offense has to do with someone who did not play. Third baseman Brady House. He did not start for the 4th time in 9 games. That is unacceptable. Brady House, to me, should be a set it and forget it player, as in he is in the Nats lineup basically every game. Set it and forget it. And I get that he's not doing so well offensively. He's doing well defensively. He's not doing well offensively, but that's just the thing. The Nats need to let him develop. The Nats need to find out what they have in him. He has only been in the majors for a little more than 2 months. June 16th was when the Nats announced having selected the contract of House from AAA Rochester, and he was one of the Nats' top prospects. He, at the time of being promoted to the majors, was the number 91 overall prospect in baseball per MLB Pipeline. The Nats took House with the number 11 overall pick in the 2021 MLB draft out of a high school in Georgia. Look, I don't know if this guy's going to pan out, but the Nats need to find out. He needs to play more. The Nats are in the midst of a lost season due to a rebuild that isn't working. Paul DeYoung, a veteran on a 1-year contract, was the Nats starting third baseman on Wednesday evening. He's hitting well right now. I don't care that he's hitting well right now. He should not be playing over Brady House. The Nats starting pitcher in this 5-4 win over the Mets on Wednesday evening was Brad Lord. He was doing well, but he ended up having a disappointing outing. He allowed 4 runs in 5 1/3 innings. He gave up 7 hits, which were a home run, 3 doubles and 3 singles. He issued 2 walks. He recorded 4 strikeouts. He threw 92 pitches, 57 strikes, 35 balls. So Lord, in the top of the 5th, gave up a 2-out solo homer by Brett Beatty to the second deck in right field to cut the Nats' lead to 4-1. The homer went a projected 455 feet per Statcast. And Lord, in the top of the 6th, allowed 3 runs as he began the inning by issuing back-to-back walks of Francisco Lindor and ex-Nat Juan Soto, and gave up a 1-out opposite field RBI double by Pete Alonso to right field, and then a 1-out opposite field 2-run double by Jeff McNeil to left field to cut the Nats' lead to 5-4. So Lord went from allowing 1 run in 5 innings to allowing 4 runs in 5 1/3 innings. But the Nats' relief pitching in this 5-4 win over the Mets on Wednesday evening was really good. 4 Nats relievers combined for 3 2/3 scoreless innings. Cole Henry tossed 2/3 of a scoreless inning. He came into the game in the top of the 6th with 1 out, a runner on second, and the Nats up 5-4. He was victimized by a throwing error by third baseman Paul DeJong, and then issued a 1-out walk of Brett Beatty to load the bases, despite Beatty having been down in the count at 1.02. But Henry then generated 2 outs. Shinosuke Ogasawara, he tossed a perfect top of the 7th. Clayton Beeter tossed a perfect top of the 8th in facing the Mets numbers 4 through 6 batters in Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, and Mark Vientos, and Jose A. Ferrer tossed a scoreless top of the 9th for the save as he continues to do a good job as the Nats' new closer/ace reliever. Game 3 for the Nats against the Mets at Nationals Park Thursday afternoon at 4:05. Mackenzie Gore will be the Nats starting pitcher. And that'll do it for you and me for now. Keep the feedback coming. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Friday show, episode 1139. We'll have much more on the Commanders. And on Friday's show, we'll talk Nationals and Orioles. The Nats are home to the New York Mets Thursday afternoon at 4:05 in Game 3 of a 3-game series. The O's are home to the Houston Astros Thursday night at 7:15 in Game 1 of a 4-game series. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and I'll talk to you on Friday.
I'm not going to play Where's Waldo, guys, all right, moving forward. So just so we're clear on that.